Thanks for tuning in to a prime time edition of the Ourlads Football Network. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, as we will talk some college football today, some SEC football. And for the very first time, we're going to be joined by Cody Goodwin, PowerMizzou at 247 Sports. So I just love saying that for the first time. You know, we've been doing this now for many years here on this network. Matter of fact, we started YouTube years ago, and it was just audio. That's how long we've been doing this. And we've had a lot of really good contacts who've been with us for years. But there has been nothing like what we've done and been able to accomplish so far this season. Because this is the very first season. We've had 5 days a week of coverage. This is our only prime time slot of the week. You can catch us Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 o'clock Eastern. And being able to put together 5 days a week has really opened up the door for us to be able to bring in a lot of new analysts to our network. And that just makes not only us, but you guys who are watching that much smarter. And that's what we're trying to do here. Because look, we're still in June. It's not even July yet. It's the last day of June. So July will kick off tomorrow. And we've had loads of interviews and we still have loads more to do. Camp doesn't even get underway for at least another 3 to 4 weeks, NFL and college. And so we've been on top of it here. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for some more coverage. We are going to have our 4 o'clock show with a Boston College interview with AJ Black. I will be recording, which we do only when we can't bring in our guests to come on and fit in the live times, but we're going to record it. Alec Bussey will be our Iowa State interview tomorrow. So we'll probably post that show sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. Alec is with Cyclone Alert, so he's been with us. He was with us last year to preview the season, and but our live coverage tomorrow at 4 o'clock with Boston College. Then on Thursday we go back to back ACC. So our next 3 live college football analysts that'll be joining us here to talk ACC football. Again, it'll be AJ Black on Wednesday, Jim Hammond on Thursday, and Thomas Dunn on Thursday. Boston College, Pittsburgh, and California. And Pittsburgh and California will be first-timers, so I love that. Next week, we have Kansas State a week from tonight. All right, that'll be a first-timer. Christian Rao will be joining us from Locked On Kansas State. Wednesday and Thursday afternoon, we'll be talking about Virginia with Greg Mattia and Mississippi State with Sam Sklar. You guessed it, first-time interviews. So, of course, I hope that these are not just first-timers, that these will be interviews that we'll be able to get back time and time again to keep us updated, especially starting off with the 2026 season. And we're off to a great start. So we've already covered tons of teams in college football and the NFL. We've got tons of season win totals that we have leaned one way or another. And don't forget, of course, starting no later than our first show in August 3rd on a Monday, no later than that, that we are going to begin our season preview segments where we're going to come on and we're going to preview all sorts of cool stuff. You know, that'll be like our official. Now, I'm just SEC preview, even though we'll probably save that for like one of the last ones. But we'll be diving into all 138 college football teams, giving our predictions conference by conference. Same thing in the NFL. We're going to cover everything that you want covered here, as well as players in college football, which Ourlads does best. So we're going to get really inside, not just, of course, I'm not a professional scout. I leave that up to Dave Syvertson, our lead scout here at Ourlads. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of scouts here at Ourlads. They do their job, and I just sit back and let them do it and make sure that you guys know how to find them. You can check out the link in the description to this video for the Ourlads Draft Review Guide. That just came out a few days ago. So check that out. I actually have a few teams in there that I'm responsible for, so you can check it out. Hope you like it. I'm sure you will. And you could also get a head start on next year's NFL draft with our draft guide, which is available both in PDF form and hard copy, just like the draft review guide. Okay, so let's now get started here with our Missouri football coverage. And I'm going to go ahead and pop up first. Take a look at the schedule for Missouri. And you know what? It's not bad early on. If everything goes well, taking a look at this, get off to a final start. Then they'll take on Texas A&M at home, which is really going to define, or at least maybe the first game of the season that really could define their season. Because after that, you get back-to-back A&M Ole Miss. And a couple of weeks later, it's back-to-back Texas and Georgia. And then they end the season with Oklahoma. So you talk about two sides of a schedule. Missouri needs to get off to a really good start there. Win total is 6.5. So I pop that up. You see it right here. Very low number. So if you think they're just going to be a borderline bowl team, then you're I guess if you go at 6, obviously, then that means you're not really too confident about Missouri. But it is a little bit more at -136. So it's sort of like Vegas thinks they're more like a 7-win team. And if you want to go over 7.5, it's +180. So we're going to find out with our special guest exactly. We're going to do our best to find out whether or not Missouri is a good wager. Over or under? Are they going to have a good season, or are they going to have a mediocre season? Or, as I put on the thumbnail, is it time to take the next step here for Missouri football? Can they do it this season? Well, let's bring in our special guest, Cody Goodwin, to the program from 247 Sports, PowerMizzou. And Cody, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for the first time with us.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me, and excited to talk some Tiger football here in the dog days of summer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is the best time to do it. Right. Get a head start on everybody else because there's still a lot going on that we still have to figure out at fall camp. And I guess you're like in between with spring practice being over. It's sort of that lull and so forth. But this was really a big change in the offseason for Missouri, both a little bit on the coaching staff as well as personnel. I mean, I was just going over, as I do before every interview, and it's amazing how much talent this team lost, either through the NFL draft or the portal. They lose their offensive coordinator. They get a big injury from one of their portal players. So that's an awful lot for a program that really was kind of looked at as like a second level SEC program trying to bust into that top level. It's going to make it real hard for them to do that this season.
Yeah, Mizzou's kind of, at least the 2023 season, a lot of people in Columbia are kind of kicking themselves like, hey, why wasn't the 12-team playoff 1 year earlier, right?
Yeah.
Because, back in 23, they went 10-2, ultimately beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And, that was a really, really good team. Cody Schrader was a fantastic story, but just a year too late. And so the next year, it's still able to hit 10 wins after, getting a win in the bowl game. Last year regressed a little bit, went 8-5, didn't beat a team with a winning record all season. And, this year it's a very intriguing team. And then when you combine it with the schedule and just kind of what everybody else did, this is a little bit of a wild card Mizzou team. I mean, just looking at the schedule, looking who they've got here, and I'm sure we'll dive into the details of it, but you could tell me 5-7, you could tell me 7-5, you could tell me 9-3. Heck, you could probably sell me, if everything goes according to plan, that this Missouri team could win 10 games. Like, that's just, and I don't know that any of those would surprise me. So it's very much like, put your guess up on a dartboard and throw it, and you have as good a chance as any of those come true.
The good news, I guess, is out of those 5 powerhouse games they're going to be playing late, 3 of them are at home. So that's going to help. But again, if they have any chance, as I just said a couple of minutes ago, they really have to start 5-0. They have to go into that Texas A&M game 5-0. And they probably will be favored in all 5 of those games, I would have to assume. But they first have to figure out what to do with the all-important quarterback position. And I know Austin Simmons lost his job last year. And I remember watching him early and just kind of getting a little bit confused. I thought that he just didn't look as good to me as I was being told he was supposed to be. And so when Chambliss came in, I mean, anybody could have looked at that and be, oh, that's it. He's done. He ain't getting that job back. So he transfers. But now does he become I don't know what happened in the spring. So does he become the de facto number one, or is there going to be a battle there?
Yeah, no, there was a battle through spring, but it was pretty much Simmons' job to lose. And even at the end of spring, Eli Drinkwitz named him QB1. So The quarterback drama out of the way. It is Austin Simmons. Who QB2 is, I think we all think it's probably Matt Zollers, who was the true freshman last year that played quite a bit after Bo Prabula got hurt. And then they also went out, in the portal and picked up Nick Evers, kind of a journeyman, started at Oklahoma, went to Wisconsin, last couple of years at UConn. Now he brings pretty good experience to the room. He's played quite a bit of football. But yeah, it is Austin Simmons' job. And, that was kind of when the portal opened up and, Ole Miss was still playing. And, I think some of the insiders were like, hey, like this, Simmons is probably going to hit the portal. And all indications suggest Mizzou. Like, one, it was a little surprising just because Drinkwitz has swung pretty big in the portal in previous years, but hasn't always landed his guy, right? Like, he was able to get Fernando Mendoza on campus. He was able to get Jaden Daniels on campus and just wasn't able to close the deal with the guys that, he really wanted, like his first pick at quarterback. And he was able to do that this offseason. So he was able to get Austin Simmons, who incredibly talented quarterback, but I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I still think there's a level of, you got to show me a little bit, I think, before I really buy it. I think that the talent is very obvious. He can make all the throws, but in the limited playing time he got at Ole Miss the last couple of years, both as a backup to Jackson Dart and, he was the starter last year before he got hurt in the Kentucky game. Just didn't see a ton, right? Like I've seen enough to, I have some questions, right? Like he's completing like just under 60% of his passes. He has 6 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions. So it's, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Austin Simmons film. I'm not necessarily a film junkie. I'm not going to go back and rewatch all of his snaps and see what kind of quarterback they're getting. But it's, he's talented. Can Mizzou get the best out of him? I think that'll go a long ways in determining their success overall this season.
Yeah, and they've had good quarterback play, so you would hope to trust that. But the OC's gone. So what kind of effect is that going to have? Lindsey comes in, and all full disclosure, I am a Michigan fan, so we weren't very happy with him. But he's had some good spots and some bad spots. And I know this was a really good coaching staff last year. So talk a little bit about that, about how big of a loss you think Kirby Moore is going to be and what kind of an offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey is going to be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of thoughts that we can go here. I think if we start with Kirby leaving, he had been at Mizzou for 3 years. He had done well. I think there was maybe a sentiment within the fan base that they wanted a little bit more out of him. I'm not sure that he really delivered on, the explosive passing game that Drinkwitz brought him in to ultimately do. But, he was able to find a head coaching job in Washington State this offseason. So it was kind of a, Drink didn't kick him out the door, but was very much like, hey, pat him on the back and say, hey, go on your way. You can go do this. And he's also from that area up there. So that's kind of a homecoming for him. Really cool stuff. I've got no ill will toward Kirby. I think he's a good dude. I think he was maybe put in a little bit of a sticky situation last year, given Mizzou's struggles at quarterback. And if you look back at last season, 8-5, Mizzou did not beat a team with a winning record. In a lot of those bigger games, it was quarterback play that fell short, right? And it was Bo Prabula. He looked really good through the first few weeks, but then you get into SEC play and it's, 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter against Alabama. It's getting hurt against Vanderbilt. It's not being able to move the ball at all against Oklahoma. And, when he wasn't able to play, it's a true freshman who making his first career start in almost 2 years, right? Because Matt Zollers, his senior year, he got hurt. And so he really didn't have a lot of senior playing tape. So, hey, welcome to the SEC, buddy. Let's go play Texas A&M, right?
Yeah.
It didn't go very well, right? And then the next time he was able to get some playing time, it was against Mississippi State, and Ahmad Hardy ran for 300 yards. And then he plays against Virginia in the bowl game, and that was a pretty stout defense that Tony Elliott had last season. So that was tough. And so just subpar quarterback play in some of the biggest games. And so not only did Drinkwitz go out and get his number one guy in Austin Simmons, but he was able to retool the offensive staff a little bit to try and get the most out of Simmons' talent, right? You mentioned Chip Lindsey, who I know Michigan fans might feel some type of way about him, but you look at his history. He developed Jarrett Stidham. He developed Nick Mullins. He developed Drake May famously. He was also one of the first to identify Bo Nix on the recruiting trail. So there's a documented history there of him having success with quarterbacks. On top of that, Missouri was able to go get Garrett Riley from Clemson. He was a Broyles Award winner at TCU, helped the Horned Frogs get to the national championship game, excellent play caller. He's now the quarterback's coach. And then on top of that, Mizzou also brought in a new tight ends coach, Alex Atkins, who was the offensive coordinator at Florida State in 2023 when they went 13-0 and won the ACC. So I think the bet here is that Drinks not only went and got a more talented quarterback, but he went and surrounded him with a brain trust to try and get plus level quarterback play. And if you're able to do that in tandem with Mizzou's outside zone run game, which will feature at some point this season Ahmad Hardy. I'm sure we'll get into that, but it will have Jamal Roberts, who's a very, very good running back. The idea is that the offense will just have more buttons to push, which should make them a little bit more dangerous. I think last season they were a little bit one-dimensional because of the quarterback struggles. Give Drinkwitz credit. He went out of his way to try and fix that problem going into 2026.
So Drink wants to open up the passing game. And that makes a lot of sense, too, when you have a good stable of backs, including Hardy. Do you see that in Simmons' game? Have you noticed that he could, just strong arm, all that kind of stuff? Have you at least noticed some of that? And what were you the most impressed with in watching Simmons practice or play a little bit? Was there a spring game?
There was not a spring game. No,
Okay.
Mizzou actually got done with their spring practices. I think their last spring practice was the first week of March Madness. So Drink made it a point and has always made it a point to try and get done with his spring practices pretty early.
Okay. So how many times did you see Simmons in practice yourself?
We got to watch, I'm trying to think, 5 or 6 different practices, and we didn't see him do anything overly crazy or we didn't get to see him throw some of the throws that you would like to see a new quarterback make, right? Like we saw him, go through drills. We saw him, just typical standard quarterback stuff. We were only able to watch, I think, 4 or 5 periods. So that's only about 20, 25 minutes. We didn't see anything groundbreaking, right? Like that's just the name of SEC spring ball. I think people who might want Mizzou to change their offense are going to be a little disappointed. Like as long as Drinkwitz is the head coach there, it's going to be a run first operation. And I think the hope, kind of like what I was saying, that they brought in a good quarterback and they also brought in a really good brain trust to kind of surround him and get the most out of him. The bet here is that it will still be a run first operation, but they're just going to be able to press a few more buttons than maybe they were last year. Because last year, the run offense was top 10 in the country. Ahmad Hardy, was a consensus All-American, 1,600 rushing yards. Jamal Roberts, as RB2, ran for 750 yards. They both average 6 yards a carry. But the offense, the quarterback specifically, did not give them, they couldn't hit, they didn't have a counter punch. They couldn't press, they could really only press 2 or 3 buttons. They could press those few buttons really, really well, but they were kind of limited. And so the bet here is that with Simmons, this new brain trust, they also retooled the receiver room. They brought back all their tight ends. And I know that Drink is really excited about that group specifically. They were able to beef up the offensive line a little bit too. The bet here is that quarterback play will allow Mizzou to press maybe 5, 6, or even 7 buttons this upcoming season so that it'd just be a little bit more versatile.
Simmons, is he the most talented quarterback that Drinkwitz has had at Missouri?
I think you can make that case, right? Because the first couple of years they were just kind of getting by with like Connor Bazelak and Brady Cook. I know did a fantastic job. Kind of, Drink tried his damnedest to recruit over Brady Cook, but Brady Cook just wouldn't have it, right? And so he had a couple 3,000-yard passing seasons. He was going through some injury stuff his senior year, and they thought Bo could be that guy, but they got into SEC play and he got exposed a little bit. And, that's just kind of, it is what it is. Sometimes not everybody's built to play the SEC week in and week out. And so, yeah, I think you can make the case that Simmons is probably the most talented quarterback he's had at Mizzou.
Yeah, because to me, and we all know how important quarterbacks are, that his development, if he could develop really quickly this season and through those first 5 games, be ready for the last 7 games of the season, all bets are off. Missouri could be right there. They could be one of the better teams in the SEC because, as you mentioned, Ahmad Hardy, because I was, what was it? After he transferred, that was one of that was like one of my proudest proclamations that I made before that season because I loved what I saw at Louisiana Monroe. I remember watching those games and I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. And then you knew he wasn't going to stay there. He was too good. And so when I heard Missouri landed him, I was like, okay, this guy is going to be really good. And I didn't think he'd get 1,600 yards last year, but he's just such a talented kid, and that running game is so good, like you said. So one of the best games in college football. If you can just now have that balance in the passing game, all of a sudden Missouri is going to be right up there with some of the best offenses in the SEC.
Yeah, I think I think the offense is going to take a step forward, or at least it's poised to take a step forward because of Austin Simmons. And this is coming from an Austin Simmons, skeptic, right? Like there's a lot of things from him that I need to see first before I really truly buy into it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's all, you're looking at the two deep right here in front of you. It pretty much matches everything that we've been putting out through spring and even into summer. The offensive line returns 3 starters, and they were able to beef it up with a couple of transfers. They redid the receiver room. They kept a talented freshman, now sophomore Donovan Alubade, went and got Caden Lee and Caleb Goody. They were able to retain all of the tight ends, and those guys do what the coaches ask, year in and year out. It all, I hate to boil it all the way down to quarterback, but it very much comes down to, can Simmons raise the ceiling, right? Because I think this Missouri offense is going to have a pretty high floor this season. Just how much further can he take them just with his own talent? That's really the big question of the season, I think.
And I'm right there with you. I need to see it first. And again, I think it sets up perfectly the way the schedule is. So it gives him time to develop into that player. And it also will give us time to say, okay, is he going to do it? Is he going to be a difference maker? And if not, even if they wind up winning their first 5 games, you'll know that with that schedule coming up, it's just not really going to be the type of season you hope for. But hey, you know what? At least the kid's there, and we'll see exactly whether or not this coaching staff can get the best out of Austin Simmons. So you mentioned the offensive line, and again, two big linemen left to the NFL, and then they added a couple of guys. But one of the guys, is he out for the season? The Atkins kid?
No, so we don't know exactly how injured he is. Drinkwitz informed of his injury on the last day of spring ball. And I've asked him a couple different times just at things, this summer, really talented player, right? Like he started 39 career games between, stops at Hawaii and Arizona State. Well, what's intriguing about him is that all those starts have come at left tackle, and they were moving him to right tackle. So that in itself is already like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see how it goes, right? You're kind of banking on those first few games to really make sure that he's got his feet under him. Now he's hurt, so that misses out on all the off-season OTAs, all the separate workouts. He could potentially be working on his technique, his footwork, things of that nature. We don't know exactly when he'll be back. I think at one point in time in the summer, Drink said that he'll be back at some point this season, maybe late September, sometime in October. That worries me a little bit, right? Because again, going back to the quarterback, Austin Simmons is a lefty, man. So the right tackle is his blind side. And if that's not shored up, the quarterback might determine the ceiling of an offense. The offensive line more or less sets the floor. And if his blind side is not taken care of, it could really hamper the entire operation. So that's, I don't have anything definitive for you when it comes to right tackle, but I am nervous about it.
Great point. But again, the way the schedule is, if they can't get him back, even if it's just after the first 4 games, I think they'd be pretty happy, at least to get him a game or 2 before Texas A&M. Okay, and then who would you consider, because Caden Green and the center, how do you pronounce his name?
Well, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. I've always thought it was Dom Judice. I think Drinkwitz has called it Judice. You're a Michigan guy. He was there for a minute. You should know this more than me.
Okay. So those 2 guys, would they be the top linemen on the team? And if not, who is? Do they have a linchpin?
I think it's probably those 2. You start with Caden Green and you start with Dom. And then also, the third returning starter is actually Curtis Piegler there at right guard. He had a little bit of a penalty problem last year, but he started all 13 games. And I actually thought he was a lot better than maybe the fans gave him credit for. That's a very, very good player. If he can clean up the penalty issue, I think he allowed, it was his first full year as a starter, and he allowed less than 10 pressures. I don't know that he allowed a sack, maybe 1 sack all season, if that. That's the inside of Mizzou's offensive line. I know Caden Green's kind of a rock star there at left tackle, but you got Dom at center, you got Piegler at right guard, and then they went and got Zach Owens from Mississippi State to plug in at left guard, who I think it's a very, very good interior option. I think the inside of Missouri's offensive line, I'm very excited to watch those guys go to work this season.
Okay. And then at wide receiver, there have been a lot of good ones to come out of Missouri. And so who would be you mentioned the true freshman from last year. Is he the number 1?
Yeah, Donovan Olubade. That's how
Yes,
you pronounce that one. I can
Olubade.
positively say that one.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an incredible athlete, man. Like he's got incredible body control. If you throw the ball within a couple yards, he will get a hand on it, and more often than not, he will catch it. So really talented. It was fun to kind of see him grow up a little bit last season. He started the last 5 games for Mizzou. And so they were able to bring in other receivers, Caleb Goody from Cincinnati, who's a speedy option, and then Caden Lee from Ole Miss, who is as sure-handed a receiver that you'll find in college football, excellent slot guy. And so you've got, Lee in the slot, you've got Olubade and Goody outside, and that's basically your top receiving options. I know that there's one of the things that we're monitoring at PowerMizzou is kind of, all right, who's the battle, who's going to lead the snaps for wide receiver 4. That's kind of more for, the folks on our board. Okay. For our purposes here, it's Olubade, Goody, and Lee. That's the top of the receiver rotation for Mizzou.
And Norfleet. And so he's a clear number 1, right?
Yes. Okay. He's clear number 1, excellent receiving option, a yak monster, has battled some injuries. You can probably put injury prone, that small label on him. I'd like to see him get all the way through a season fully healthy. If he's able to do that, I think he would actually his draft stock would go through the roof, but that's been kind of an issue for him the last 3 years. He's missed time every season with various injuries. Most notably, it's been a shoulder the last couple of years. So I'd like to see him stay healthy, because when he's healthy, he is, he's an excellent yards after catch guy, led the team last year with 5 receiving touchdowns. He's a big threat in the red zone, but also he's a guy that you can get on a wheel route. And if the linebacker's not ready, he's fast enough to leave him in the dust.
Okay, yeah, because I was looking at his production. I'm like, wait a second, that seems a little down, but it makes sense now if he's missing time. So that means, like you said, a few more games, a little bit more healthy, and those numbers can definitely get up there more in tune with his talent. Okay, so and this is an overall good tight end room, though, was what you said. So this is, and it just sounds to me really that the offense is not going to be a problem. It's just going to be Austin Simmons. As he develops, the offense will be fine.
Yeah, I hate to boil it down to just that, but that's really what this kind of boils down to. I like the receivers. I like where the offensive line is at. I like the tight end room. It's a very versatile room. You've got Norfleet, who excellent pass catcher. Jordan Harris, number 86, tight end 2, kind of a block first, dirty work type guy. Jude James, 89. He's a little bit more of an H-back. And then Gavin Hoffman, very talented athlete. So one of those guys that's probably biding his time, kind of waiting for his moment. So I'm not sure how much he'll get to play this season. But very versatile tight end room. It's easy to talk up a lot of Missouri's, skill positions, and we haven't even mentioned the running backs yet, but it really kind of all comes down to the quarterback. If he's able to, if he's able to allow Mizzou to hit a few more buttons, it could be a very good offense this fall.
Yeah. You mentioned Zollers. So how, what kind of recruit was he? Because I remember I was doing some Penn State stuff last year and talking about this kid. So is he because he is, Simmons is still young. He just doesn't have a lot of experience, even though he could bolt to the NFL soon if he has a great year or two. But how good can Zollers be?
I think he can be very good. He's a dude that he needs reps, right? I think the arm talent is obvious. We saw that in limited playing time last season. Very strong arm, not afraid to rip it. Maybe even sometimes a little too confident last season, which was fun to watch, right? Because, when defenses weren't ready for him, right? He came in the second half against Vanderbilt, and I'm not sure Vanderbilt was fully ready for what he could do. And he marched them down the field, and, they were about a half a foot away on a Hail Mary throw to tie the game and force overtime. So, very strong arm. I think just the mechanics need to get ironed out. I think just, a year of concentrated development this year behind Austin Simmons and really getting to pick the brain of Nick Evers. And then again, you got Chip Lindsey, you got Garrett Riley, you got Alex Atkins, you got a really good brain trust there. I think that'll benefit Matt Zollers in the long term. But yeah, he's a guy that he needs some development and he needs some reps. Once he's able to get those underneath him, I do think he could be a pretty good quarterback.
Okay, we know how good Hardy is. Not a lot of people outside Missouri know who Jamal Roberts is, but as you mentioned, he put up some really good numbers. So what's his role?
So I guess until Hardy comes back, he will be RB1. So we're presuming that Hardy is probably going to miss some time. We should probably know more probably around SEC Media Days. That'll be the next time we can really pester drink about Hardy and his recovery and what it looks like and what fall camp might look like for him. So we're under the presumption that Hardy's going to miss some time. That said, you've got Jamal Roberts stepping in at RB1 in the meantime. I'm not sure that there's going to be much of a drop off, man. Like, this is a really good running back. He's a little bit of a different running back than Hardy. Like, Hardy's very, very compact, low center of gravity. He will bowl you over. And Roberts has that capability, right? I think he recorded like 30 broken tackles last season, but he's also a little like he's got some speed to him. When he gets into the open field, it's really hard to catch him. And he's also a guy, like, he does some dirty work stuff too. Like, he was the third down back last season. They brought him in for pass protection. He's also got hands. So his ability to catch passes out of the backfield, I think, will make this offense a little bit more multiple. So yeah, I mean, Missouri's offense is going to be worse because they don't have Ahmad Hardy there. But with Jamal Roberts at RB1, I'm very excited to see what this looks like, because that is a very, very good running back and somebody that Missouri really had to fight to keep from going into the transfer portal, because Drink has said with this, a number of, I think, other assistants have said this too. Jamal Roberts is good enough, I think, to be a starter, not just elsewhere in Power 4 or Power 2 football, but like, he could be a starter in the SEC. I think there's a lot of people that believe that he's that good. So Drink had to fight really hard to make sure that he kept him a Missouri Tiger this offseason.
Where was Hardy shot?
It was in the upper leg. I don't know which leg it was, to be frank with you, but it was in the upper leg. And so, he's back rehabbing. He's back in Columbia. I think one of the most recent social media updates that he posted, it looked like he was not holding crutches. I don't know if that's him just, being, a goofy teenager / college kid and just, leaving his crutches over yonder. And updates Drink said was that Hardy was ahead of schedule. I don't know exactly what that means, but it does sound encouraging and promising. So we'll probably know a little bit more at SEC Media Days.
All right. And what do we know about the two transfer running backs that will then become 2 and 3?
Yeah. So RB3, Zyshawn Edwards, that's how you pronounce that one. He's from FCS Houston Christian, I believe. He was an FCS freshman All-American. He ran for 1,000 yards last year. A little bit of a smaller build, right? I think he's like 5'10", 175, 180. So you hope that he spent the summer in the weight room with a gallon of chocolate milk, putting on a little bit of weight to get ready for the SEC. But I mean, he's talented. He's speedy. That's a guy that was pretty coveted in the transfer portal cycle, and he ultimately chose Mizzou. So I think that says a lot about just what Mizzou has been able to do with running backs. And then also, Curtis Looper, the running backs coach, the relationships that he's able to form with guys pretty quickly. And then the next guy behind him, Malay Fonatai, he's another FCS transfer from Montana. A little bit more of if you look at him, you would probably think fullback, not running back. He's basically a square full of muscle. But this is a guy that didn't play a ton for Montana, but he was part of a really, really talented FCS program. Montana got to the FCS. I believe it was the semifinals this past season in the FCS playoffs. So, he's a little productive in the opportunities that he did get. But yeah, that's now you're playing in the SEC, right? The FCS to SEC jump. We'll see what those guys make of it.
Okay. Are there any true freshmen on offense that might get some opportunities for some work this season?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not even sure if one might even have an outside chance. I mean, I'm even trying to think of maybe the receivers a little bit. I mean, Jabari Brady is a freshman receiver who, he enrolled over the summer. He's a guy that still has to, he's got to learn the offense. He's got to kind of learn what it takes to be, a Division I athlete and make sure that he's got those ducks in a row. Khalif Canty is another one that you guys have behind Curtis Piegler at right guard. I know he had a really strong spring. And he's a pretty big body, well over 300 pounds, 6'4" type guy. Drinkwitz made mention of him in spring, that he was a guy that, they were pleasantly surprised by in terms of just where he's at and picking up the offense in his role. Maybe in mop-up duty, we see Canty. Maybe in mop-up duty, we see Max Warner, the freshman running back. Maybe in mop-up duty, we see, Isaac Jensen, a talented tight end who signed this past offseason. So there might be some in mop-up duty, but really on the offense, I'm not sure that we'll see it. Something will have gone very wrong if we see some freshmen on offense.
Is that I know I guess I could ask you the same question as we move over to the defense, because I see a lot of freshmen here on the depth chart. I guess two questions. One would be, same question, first of all, on the defensive side. But the second question, is it normal for a Drinkwitz freshman class to need time? Or have you seen some true freshmen over the years that have been able to develop a lot quicker?
Yeah, I think you see quite a few, depending on the position, right? Luther Burden at receiver, like he was a little bit different, right? He was a 5-star. He was ready to go immediately. But Alubade is a good example too at receiver.
Yeah.
Like he was ready to go. He had an impressive spring, impressive fall camp, and after the second bye week, they could not take him off the field. He was.
What star was he? Was he a 3 or a 4?
I believe he was a 4-star.
Okay.
So, just physically imposing body for a freshman, that was a guy that, I like it when coaches are like, force us to play you and the players respond. And, so Alubade did that last season. So we're able to see a little bit of that. Every now and again, you see some guys in the secondary, occasionally a linebacker, because they like to rotate their linebackers quite a bit under Corey Batoon. So you'll see some guys maybe in, hey, we'll sprinkle you in for 10 snaps here. Let's see how you do. Let's make sure you pick up everything. Let's make sure you do your job right. So, it actually wouldn't shock me at all to see a couple of freshmen play a little bit on defense, specifically Jaden McGregory, a safety. He's from West Des Moines, Iowa. He looks the part. Like, that's a guy who we saw in spring ball where we were like, all right, 6'2", 185, and he's still putting some muscle on. That guy just looks the part. Taj Overton, 4-star defensive lineman. He was a top 100 recruit. There are snaps available in Missouri's defensive interior. And so he's one of the options of like, hey, if he can improve and he can, pick up the defense and what his role is really quickly, maybe he sneaks into the rotation. So those are really, I think, the first two guys that are kind of top of mind and on the defensive side of like who are freshmen that might be able to play.
Okay, so on defense, let's start up front because it looks like everybody's returning as far as the starters. Is that the case?
That is not the case, actually. If you look at, they have a lot of guys returning, so the cupboard is not bared. Okay. But Missouri is actually, they're having to replace all 11 regular starters from a season ago.
Wow.
Again, that doesn't mean the cupboard is totally bare. Sure, they have a lot of players who are coming back. But
okay.
This is a whole new starting 11 for Mizzou than what they rolled out last season.
Okay, so as far as the guys up front, who do we need to keep an eye on? What's the depth chart going to look like?
Yeah, the guys up front, I think you start with Darius Smith. He's going to be that jack stand-up outside linebacker. He's kind of the leader of Missouri's edge room this upcoming season. So this is a guy that's really kind of tall and lanky, but he's put on some really good weight. He's a Georgia transfer. He's dealt with some injuries here and there, and he was kind of, the third edge defender behind Damon Wilson, who's now at Miami, and Zion Young, who was a second-round draft pick. And he, in limited snaps, he had like 30 pressures, 4 sacks. Really, really effective pass rusher. So he's kind of the guy when it comes to, Missouri up front. But then also I think on the interior, Marquise Gracial is a guy that I think we're all really excited to watch. He was another guy that, that they had really good interior players last year with Chris McClellan and Sterling Webb. Marquise Gracial was kind of number 3 and really more of a run stopper, I think, than a pass rusher. So he spent all of his spring trying to develop some pass rush moves. This is a big body, a space eater, and also just, really good dude when we've been able to talk to him after some spring practices, a couple months back. So I think you start with those two, Darius Smith, Marquise Gracial. That's kind of, the two faces to know when it comes to Missouri's front.
And are there and the other guys are just kind of still trying to find their roles that will be settled during fall camp?
Yeah, I think so. The interesting thing about the Missouri's defensive front is that there's, they have guys who Drink has earmarked as like, okay, these guys are going to get the first crack at first team reps, right? And you have them right there on your website, right? Darius Smith, Marquise Gracial, Jalen Marshall, the nose tackle, and then Langdon Kitchen, the defensive end, who's replacing Zion Young. Those guys are going to get the first crack at first team reps. Okay. Whether or not they, take advantage of that opportunity, I think is what remains to be seen. Because I think there's a lot of excitement about a lot of other guys that are behind them. So specifically Marshall and Kitchen, if those guys can't produce, there's quite the list of guys behind them that are going to be ready to maybe take advantage. Guys like Dayton Hopkins, who I know is listed at Jack right now, but that's a guy that Missouri really likes at defensive end. They went and got a couple of transfers in Malik Bryant and Jaden Jones from Miami and Florida State. And then in the interior, they also brought in Donta Simpson, who last year as a freshman got quite a bit of playing time on Miami's defensive line, which is pretty impressive. And then they also got Jason Dowell, who redshirted last year. He's a former wrestler. I'm a former wrestler, so I'm, big thumbs up for there. But this is a guy that just has the right mindset, and he played a little bit last year and got better with each opportunity that he got. And I think he's one of those like dark horse candidates that maybe could break out this upcoming season. So if the starters can't get it done, there's a lot of guys behind them that they're going to, it's one of those opportunities where, Corey Batoon, the defensive coordinator, he can just throw bodies at the problem until he solves it.
Okay, and then the other two linebackers looks like they're in good shape. The kid Woodyard coming over from Auburn and Rodriguez seemed to have a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, I think Missouri's linebacker room, like there's a chance that this could be a very, very special group this year. So you start with Rodriguez, who is basically taken over for Josiah Trotter. He'll probably be the green dot. But on the occasion that he needs to relinquish the green dot, Robert Woodyard Jr., like you mentioned, very talented, productive linebacker from Auburn. You start with those two. And then Missouri likes to rotate their linebackers. So behind those guys, you've got Jeremiah Beasley, another former Michigan guy, who just excellent speed and a guy that hasn't played a ton. But I think that there are probably some packages that Bethune can roll him out to help utilize his speed to just kind of get on the field and wreak some havoc. And then Dante McClellan, I think, is the fourth linebacker there who, he shined last year with a pick six in the season opener and looked pretty good in the limited opportunities that he got last season. He was a pretty big special teams guy. I think those four, there's a real good chance that those four could be a really, really special group at linebacker for Mizzou.
So that's the strength of the defense.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how's the secondary looking? Banner, is he the top guy back there?
Yeah, Santana Banner he's returning at one of the safety spots, right? Because Mizzou does, they do the free safety, they do a strong safety / rover, and then they do kind of the star position, which is kind of a linebacker safety hybrid. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in that role because he's a pretty big dude, right? Like 6'2", 225, thumper. Like he's another one of those dudes that he may not have started a lot last year, but he played a lot. He played like 500 snaps last season. One of those guys where it was just like, hey, like the coaches are telling me to play you, and he's forcing the coaches to play him. So really talented player. He'll start somewhere in the secondary. And then I think at one of the cornerback spots, Chris Graves Jr., another transfer from Ole Miss, he will start at one of the cornerback spots. Outside of that, no idea what this secondary is going to look like. So there's a lot of fun pieces there, right? There's Banner, there's Graves, there's also Elijah Dodson, another former Michigan guy who sensational athlete. I know that they're going to find a spot for him somewhere in the secondary, probably at safety, but that's a guy that can run, that can cover, that can tackle. He's not afraid to get his face in it. So I know that they'll find a role for him. The battle for CB2 will be interesting to monitor during fall camp. And then they've got a lot of other dudes that they can kind of throw at that free safety position. Another one of those, we're going to throw bodies at the problem type deal.
Speaking of the battle for number 2 corner, what other Missouri fans that are watching and they're going to be tuning in during camp and getting your site out and everything regarding Missouri football, what would be the big battles that they need to be keeping an eye on in camp?
Yeah, I think the battle for cornerback 2, CB2, that one intrigues me quite a bit because you've got a number of transfers. You have a lot of guys that have played, right? And you've got a couple of transfers, 2 guys from Oregon, Jaleel Florence and Sion Lalia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. These guys are really long and lanky. Florence is 6'1", 190. Lalia is 6'4", 196. So real big, imposing cornerbacks. They played quite a bit at Oregon over the last few years. So they, ultimately Dan Lanning's just a recruiting machine. And, if you can't keep up, so, you're going to have to go find somewhere else. So here they are in Columbia.
Yeah.
So then in addition to those two, Nick Deloche Jr. Is another guy who has been in the program for a few years. He was actually a starter in 2024 for quite a bit, struggled a little bit. But because of some other transfers and just the way that the defense ultimately fell, he was able to use last season. He didn't play a ton last season, but concentrated development, I think, is the term that Corey Bethune used to describe Nick Deloche. So, can he break his way back into the starting lineup? I think those are kind of the top 3 guys for the second cornerback spot that I'll be paying attention to come fall camp.
And then the other battles on defense will be what, at nose tackle and one of the edge spots?
Yeah, I think I'm more curious about how the defensive front will come together. Like, Langdon Kitchens, a D2 transfer last year, and he played pretty well in limited snaps. He came down from Northwest Missouri State. He was, the defensive end behind Zion Young, played about 170 snaps last year, was pretty productive, had 14 pressures, 14 tackles, tackle for loss, a half sack. Like, he was good. Can he continue to be good with a bigger load, right? Like, that is, I think that's kind of the question there. Same thing with Jalen Marshall, played a little bit last year, was pretty good. Can he handle more snaps? If not, they've got a list of guys behind him that'll take over for that. And then, mention the secondary, the battle for CB2, but then also, who's going to be the third safety, right? I'm pretty confident that Banner and Dotson will be on the field. Can Trajan Greco, another guy who's been in the program, can he take that step and be a starter? Or will they turn to, Jackson Hancock? Will they turn to Kensley Loder-Faustin, who's another Auburn transfer? Will they turn to the freshman, Jaden McGregory? So another position where it's like, okay, we're going to kind of throw bodies and mix and match and put the puzzle together and just see what the best options are for us.
no such battles on offense, correct? Or are there any offensive line battles?
I think the only position battle that we're curious about right now is, with Josh Atkins hurt, there is a little bit of a question mark at right tackle. And,
Okay.
you guys have Logan Reichert there listed as the starter. He's a guy that's been in the program originally from Kansas City, has dealt with some injuries the last couple of years. But the guy behind him, actually, Luke Work, another Mississippi State transfer, he's a guy that has played quite a bit. I think down in Starkville, he played in 20 games, made 8 starts. I think the advanced analytics, if you trust that, says he was a little bit better inside. But he does have that experience. He's played basically everywhere on the offensive line except center. So I wouldn't be shocked, actually, if Luke Work is the starter at right tackle if Atkins can't go in week 1.
You give him the edge right now?
I would, yeah, just based on total experience. And so, how those guys look in fall camp, I think will be, just because, again, the right tackle is the blind side for Austin Simmons.
Yeah.
That'll be paramount and something that we're going to be monitoring during fall camp.
And special teams, the new punter, the kid, Craig, he's got a big leg, huh? But lots of 50-yarders.
Yeah, he's back after being hurt last season. He injured his leg. He tore his ACL in week 1. He was trying to make a tackle after a kickoff. So I think
never a good idea.
Yeah, not great.
No.
So, but he was back kicking actually during the spring. So he'll be back, I think, fully healthy. He actually should be back fully healthy by the end of this month. So he's been participating in OTAs, real strong leg, another guy from the Kansas City area. I know that they're really excited about him. He can make, I think, a pretty big difference for this offense just because he gives them another point scoring option once they cross the 50. And then Bruno Ruse, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. I'm not 100% sure, actually, but he's a Florida State transfer who's he's a little bit of a dynamic specialist. He can kick, he can punt, he can do kickoffs. So this is a guy that he actually came over with a new special teams coordinator, John Papuchis. And so that's, player following coach. I think that usually works out in the player's favor.
Okay, so as we wrap up here, what do you think? 6.5. I know you have a whole couple of months before you have to make your final prediction, Cody. So again, it seems a little low for me, especially with the way that schedule starts. But there are some key injuries that you talked about. That whether it's Hardy, blindside tackle.
I think
things of that nature that may not be available for us. But I don't know. I still kind of go ahead. I still feel it's kind of hard to believe that they would not be able to win 7 games.
Well, I mean, you pull up the schedule again, like I was saying at the beginning, right? Like 5-7, 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, 9-3, even 10-2. If everything breaks right, none of that would really surprise me. And so I think you keep saying first 5 games. I have, with a red marker, circled that Mississippi State game at the end of September. That, to me, I think is actually the first big test of the season because that game is in Starkville. I think that the game against Kansas, that's like the first pop quiz of the season. Like, I don't know if it's truly a test just because Kansas is having to reload quite a bit of their roster. And I think just talent-wise, Mizzou matches up pretty well with them. But that game in Starkville at the end of September, man, that's a Mississippi State team that has played. They're in the year 3 with Jeff Lebby now. They took some pretty noticeable steps forward in year 2, right? Like they beat Arizona State. They took both Texas and Tennessee to overtime in Starkville. And then you look at Mississippi State's schedule, actually, the 2 of their first 3 games, they're on the road at Minnesota, Big Ten opponent, and then they're on the road at South Carolina to open SEC play. So that's going to be a battle-tested Mississippi State team in Starkville, 4th week of the season. That game, I've circled it with a red marker because that, I think, will really tell us a lot about this Missouri team. And so, I mean, you keep saying, they got to start 5-0. They got to start 4-0, man. Like they got to take care of those Bulldogs first, and then maybe we'll really know kind of what this team has. Because then they come back to 2 straight home games. I know A&M has had their number recently, but that Florida team, like, don't joke about them either, because there's a lot of talent on that roster, and they finally have an adult in the room coaching them. So, I could go up and down that SEC play. And outside of everybody against Arkansas, this is going to be a pretty tough schedule for Mizzou this season.
Yeah, it's the SEC. It's like almost every game is tough. That's why from top to bottom, it's the best conference in college football. And just, again, speaking from a Big Ten guy, now Big Ten might have the better teams at the top over the last few years winning championships, but for the whole, Big Ten can't compete with the SEC when they're talking about the entire conference. And that's what you said. I mean, and when I said, obviously, my overall point is that if you can't get to 5-0 by the time you're facing Texas A&M. That remaining schedule tells me that, yeah, you are now going to definitely have a hard time winning 6 or 7 games. But you're right. I mean, Mississippi State, I was just really excited. And I love those types of situations. Not that they've been a down program for very long. We have to remember that. But it's always nice to see those underdog teams come up and make some, big games. And they had some really nice wins, as you know, and he even had some nice losses that it looked like they almost were able to pull out some games. So I don't have to tell you, it's a murderous row of schedule of teams that Missouri has to face in the SEC all the time. And is that kind of why, when you take a look at the non-conference schedule, that you don't see like any powerhouse type matchups? It's like, look, we have enough problems getting through this SEC schedule. We're not going to give us any. I mean, it's not like Missouri's Georgia or Alabama yet either. So is that kind of the plan? Is Kansas, that's tough enough?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? And I think the matchup with Kansas, right, like that's reviving the border war. When Missouri left for the SEC in 2012, Kansas refused to play them, right? And that was, that's bordering state that dates, that's a rivalry that literally dates all the way back to the Civil War. So,
sure.
As someone who grew up in Kansas City, it was kind of a bummer that they didn't play each other for almost, 14 years. And so they brought the rivalry back. I think it started with basketball and maybe some other, non-rev sports, but they brought it back in football last year. It was a pretty outstanding game, second week of the season. Now Mizzou is making the return trip to Lawrence. Like I said, I think Kansas just has to return and has to fill too many holes. So that to me, it's on the road. It's a rivalry game, a little bit more of a pop quiz than maybe a true test. I think Mizzou should go in and take care of business. It's one of those games where it's like, I'm pretty sure they're going to win, but how do they look when they do it, right? I think that'll tell me something about this team. But I think that first true road game to Mississippi State, that will really tell me a lot about this Missouri team.
Especially how does Austin Simmons look? That's going to be the big one. How often do you do your podcast, Cody?
Yeah, so our publisher, Gabe DeArmond, he runs the podcast. In the off season, we only do it once, maybe twice a week. But once fall camp kicks up, we'll probably do it pretty consistently twice a week. And then the season kicks off, we'll do it 3 times a week. So we usually do it Monday nights. Gabe will come back sometime in the midweek to have, try and have a fun conversation in the lead up to the game. And then we always do a post-game show after the game on Saturdays. So we do 3 times a week. It's called State of the Tigers, is on Monday night. And then it's just the PowerMizzou podcast whenever we're able to get it up after games.
How did you get the gig?
Dumb luck. I was actually, I've been with 24/7 for a few years. I used to cover Alabama for them for a couple of years. Oh. So I was down there I covered Nick Saban's last season, and then I covered Kalen DeBoer's first season. Also covered some basketball while we were down there. Alabama got to the Final Four one year. Covered a little bit of softball. They got to the college, the Women's College World Series. And then the Paramount layoffs came, and my flag went up. And then a couple months later, Gabe DeArmond, the publisher of PowerMizzou, reached out and said, "Hey, I need a football writer. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested. This is a team I grew up watching. I've got a little bit of institutional knowledge there. I've been covering the SEC for the last few years, so I'm up to date on what they're doing." And I wasn't out of a job long, thankfully. I know that's not the case for everybody. And moved to Columbia about a year ago, and it's been really fun.
Awesome. And that's, again, you hit it right on the head. I mean, that must be something out of all the teams to cover. You're able to cover a team that you were, I guess, growing up. Those are what were the favorite teams for you growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kansas City. So you're smack in between, Missouri, Kansas, and K-State. So there's a lot of those guys everywhere.
A lot of options.
Yeah, but then Kansas City is also a pro sports town. So you've got the Chiefs, you've got the Royals. The Kansas City is a little bit of a soccer town. I think that's been, on display during the World Cup this past month. So you've got a men's team sporting Kansas City, but then also the women's team, the Kansas City Current. So that's pretty fun. They've got some minor league hockey teams there. So I grew up right in the middle of the border war. And so, for them to go away from it, but then to come back to it my first year back on the Mizzou beat, that was a pretty fun afternoon. And it also turned out to be a pretty exciting game overall.
Yeah, that's the thing that outsiders do have to realize, especially more so in college football, is that you look at a schedule and you just might see a certain team or a game and go, but it's like, wait a second, you really understand this is a rivalry game. And anything can happen in a rivalry game. So
most things go out the window when it comes to rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Cody, great job. I really appreciate it. I hope we get to talk the time to talk at some point before things get really going for the upcoming season. I've got links in the description of this video for everybody to check out Cody's work. And again, I really appreciate it, Cody. And hopefully we'll talk again real soon.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. Always down to talk Missouri Tigers. And you can catch all our work at PowerMizzou.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network.
You got it, Cody. Thank you. All right, that's Cody Goodwin, PowerMizzou at 247 Sports, talking some Missouri Tigers football. 6.5 is the win total, minus 136. Under is plus 115. As I pop it up right here on the screen once again. And yeah, this is a tough one. This is one of those where, because I would say 75% of the time, 80% of the time after doing one of the interviews and we go through and decide, okay, which way are we going to lean? I'd say we lean one way or another. But there are times, 20% of the time, where I say, I'm going to pass and I need to wait. I need to wait for a variety of reasons, injuries. I want to see what's going on in camp. And this is exactly one of those situations in college. And yeah, there's just too many questions right now from Missouri for me to be able to sit there and tell you guys, yeah, I feel real good about this. 7 wins, definitely book it. And then also want to see how Simmons is doing in camp even. I know it's only camp, but it's not spring camp. Fall camp is different. You know, you go there and follow Cody's work, and he's going to go to practice in the fall, and he's going to be able to tell you a completely different story about what he sees from Austin Simmons. It's going to be real practice. It's going to be the practice. It's going to be one of those. Fall camp is basically, and again, you see it in the NFL, training camp. The deal is the pads are on and you are going to see a certain level of a player, especially a player who needs to develop like Austin Simmons. And I think you are going to be able, for the most part, every player is different, but especially a developing player, you're going to be able to see, okay, I like what I see. They're not going to show anything, obviously, but they're going to show you enough regarding arm strength. How does he handle the situation? Because this is only practice, but still, sometimes practice is going to be more competition than who you're going to play early on in the season. And if you take a look at that schedule, pop that up again with that Arkansas Pine Bluff game. And now look, I have no idea how Arkansas Pine Bluff is. You got these FCS programs who are a lot better than we think. But again, it's not an FBS program. So the point is that practice at Missouri could very well be just as intense as what you'll see at Arkansas Pine Bluff when the game kicks off. And it's just what it is. Now, again, I don't know how good they are, but my point is that if you follow Cody, and he can, at some point, I should say, during practice for that few weeks leading up to the start of the regular season, give you a good indication of what he feels. Okay. Does it? Because I've been hearing all sorts of bad stuff at Michigan with what's going on with Underwood. Now, that was only the spring. And all I hear is, oh, don't worry about it. It's early, new staff, haven't had a lot of time, all that other stuff. Just wait until camp. Wait until fall camp, and then you're going to be able to tell whether or not you see anything different. The problem is that I don't, and I'm just speaking again, Michigan. The problem is that while you can't see sometimes, like let's just say Simmons, if Simmons had not looked good, because you can actually see, I think spring practice is one of those situations where it's kind of hard to not look decent in any role you're playing because there's no tackling and all that kind of stuff. So if you can at least look like you're competent, then there's a problem. And I didn't hear that from Cody. Okay. But I heard that a lot with Michigan and Underwood. And I saw it myself in their little spring game It was bona fide practice. And he looked like the same guy that we saw last year. And that's not the guy that we want to see. And we thought there to be some sort of progression, even though it's only the spring. Well, we didn't see anything, nothing. And so there's a lot of doubt. But and look, I haven't seen Simmons. Cody has. And Cody's somebody just like me with Simmons. I need to see it. All right. Need to see it on the field. But still, I think that at least in practice, you should still be able to see something. And so it didn't sound like to me that there's a big worry because he got the job. It's his job. He won the job somehow. And Zollers is a halfway decent prospect. So I got to assume that Simmons did some pretty good things. And so that's great. That's a good step in the right direction. So we'll see. I mean, the kid has a lot of talent. He wouldn't have been that big of a recruit without that. But hey, Underwood was also a big time recruit, and not every 5-star kid works in college football because we don't even, I mean, how many guys in the NFL that are supposed to be these, blue chip, top 5, top overall quarterbacks that completely fail? I mean, it happens over and over and over again. So just imagine at the college level, when these kids come from high school, that's basically what they are. 5-star recruits are basically like top 5 draft picks. And I got myself a top 5 draft pick quarterback. Well, they don't all work out. And so far, Simmons did not work out last year. But look, he was young. It was his first opportunity to be the man, and it didn't work. Change of scenery. I'm sure that was a good thing for him. There was another year he would have had to have waited behind Chambliss, and who wants to wait? Nowadays, why wait? You can get paid, you can start, you can play, and I think it's a real good situation for him. Now, I'm pretty confident that Drinkwitz is going to get the best out of this kid. What's the best? And that's another reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to go in the direction of saying, oh, I think this is a 7-win or more team. But I do think that there is the possibility of this team being better than what the odds say the projection is at this point. Problem is, it's a real tough schedule at the back half. And then throw in, as Cody said, you got to throw in rivalry game on the road. And then even those first 2 games against Mississippi State and Florida, we talk about it all the time, top to bottom, even Arkansas, because we don't know how they're going to be this year. All of these programs. I mean, anytime because it used to be just a few years ago. Okay, well, we get a break if we play Vandy. And then even you have to go way back because Stoops did a really good job with Kentucky. But, there were times where you'd be able to say, all right, there's like 2 or 3 teams in the SEC, usually just 2, and always Vandy, that you go, okay, that's our cupcake. That's our bye week. But it's just up and down. Now, look, you could say, well, I don't know if I trust Beamer at South Carolina. Disappointing last year. Look, they added a new OC. He's got a good track record. You put him up with the quarterback, and you hope that this is the year that you were going to get last year. If that happens, then South Carolina is going to be a lot better. Nobody knows about Arkansas, and I haven't been able to speak to anybody with Arkansas yet. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. Kentucky, same thing. We haven't spoken to anybody at Kentucky, but I think they're headed in a good direction. It was just probably getting stale, and I get that. Especially with the offense. Stoops, really good defensive guy. In Kentucky, throughout Stoops' tenure, was always a good defensive team, but he just couldn't get that offense going. He would have the offense in decent enough shape to win 6, 7, 8 game year. But again, it's when you're Kentucky in the SEC, that's pretty good. But in this situation now where Missouri is, you play in a conference where almost every single week you just don't know. You have to play your best. especially if you're on the road. But right now, I would say Arkansas would be the biggest mystery of them all. Let me see if I could pop up Arkansas and see see how they're looking at this point. Do we have that here? There it is. Where is Arkansas? All right. So they get the new coach from Memphis. And let's see. And I'm going right to quarterback. Let's see. They got a young quarterback. They got a young quarterback room. And this kid actually, put up some decent numbers. Limited action. So I can see why he might be the starting quarterback. I'm not really a big Silverfield guy. I think the problem I had with him initially, and he kind of got to a point where before he left, I was like, you know what? Okay, I kind of respect what he's done. He's won games there and all that. But still, the one thing that I just always did not like was his inability to get that team to win championships. That's what I didn't like. They had a really talented quarterback there for like 5 years. And so they put up big numbers offensively. That was never the problem, but couldn't play good enough defense and couldn't win the big game. And so I don't know. So that would concern me, because if I'm going to hire a coach from the group of 6 now to coach an SEC team, I want to know that coach has won championships, has won conference titles, things of that nature. I don't want to, I get it. Not every coach needs to be able to prove that, because there are a lot of coaches who are really good who have never even coached a game. They've been an assistant and they come over from a lower level and they wind up producing. I get that. I'm just saying, for the most part, law of averages, I just would prefer that. So I don't know. Can't tell you what. Look, I'll talk hopefully to someone at Arkansas, and we'll find out how they feel about the Silverfield hire and what kind of team they have. And look, there's a lot of new players here, so that's not a big surprise. I'd still have to say, if I'm just kind of thinking about which team I would point to as the bottom of the SEC, I would have to go to Arkansas. Let me see what Vegas thinks. Let's see what Vegas has at the bottom of the SEC. Oh, yep, there they are. Arkansas and Mississippi State. I'll tell you right now, no way. Mississippi State, definitely over Arkansas. Definitely. Oh, and we're going to talk Mississippi State football a week from Thursday. Sam Sklar from the Clarion Ledger will join us. So we'll find out what's going on there with Mississippi State. Because as we were talking before, I mean, I was really surprised that they were competitive the way they were last year. And let's see here. What does this look like? Camario Taylor's at quarterback. What were his stats last year as a true freshman? Not bad. Not bad for a true freshman in the SEC. Swan, he's been around forever. So it looks like right now Taylor's the guy. Bothwell's a good player. Got him from South Alabama a few years ago. That's when he had the 832. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, they had a little bit more experience at quarterback. So, but hey, look, who knows? Maybe Camario Taylor winds up being a really good quarterback, and that gives him better quarterback play even than they had last year. I could see that happening. Yeah, I think Levy did a really good job. He's only been there a very short while, but I would definitely put Mississippi State ahead of Arkansas. Now, I know that's not like a big thing. It's the bottom of the SEC. But look here, there's a big gap. You've got all these teams in the SEC up to Auburn and South Carolina at the 40 or 50 to 1 mark to win the SEC. Then you've got to go to 100 to 1. You're doubling it to Vanderbilt, almost now doubling it from Vanderbilt to Kentucky, or 40 points to 140, and then another big gap and a gap. So yeah, I don't think this is right. I think they're being a little bit disrespected here. Kentucky, as I was saying, I really do like the hire. So I thought that was a very good hire. And it shouldn't be a surprise that they went out and got themselves an offensive guy. Everything that they've been going on for so long at Kentucky with that defense and not having a good enough offense, to bring in an offensive guy, a no-brainer, and they did it. So you really have to be happy. Look, I think Kentucky's even going to be better, though. I really do. I mean, this Minchie kid, he comes from the Notre Dame program. He lost the job last year in that battle with Carr. And again, you're going to go to a young quarterback, similar to Simmons, that we just don't know. But I just, look, this is going to be one of the things that hopefully we'll get a Kentucky guy on, and we'll be able to talk about, okay, well, how's the defense? Is the defense going to still be, I mean, how many players did they retain that they'll still give them the opportunity to play at least good defense, SEC defense? I don't expect Kentucky to be these great or high-level defensive teams in the SEC anymore, because that's the direction they're changing. And when you when you recruit that way, either in the portal or in just overall regular recruiting, it's usually goes one way or the other, unless you're a major program, which you can go both ways. So that's why Kentucky's defense has been so good, and they wind up getting more, the recruit and the portal, and it comes in with defense, and you just sprinkle a couple of offensive. Now it's going to go the other way. So, but this is the one year I'm the most interested in, because it looks like there might be some guys from last year's team that could end up being a part of their defense, sprinkled in with some portal players. So we got to find out about that. A lot of new players on offense, which is exactly what you want to see through that offense. So yeah, I expect Kentucky to even be a dangerous team to contend with. And we've already spoken with Chris Lee, our Vanderbilt contact. So if you're into that, check it out. It's up on the channel. We've talked to Auburn. We've talked Florida. We just did Missouri today. We've done Tennessee, Oklahoma. We've done Texas A&M, Georgia. And so we're going to hopefully round out the rest of the SEC between now and kickoff. But I think Vanderbilt and Kentucky Arkansas, I really don't have a whole lot of hope for, but maybe my mind will change with an interview. Mississippi State, we'll find out next week. And Kentucky, again, I still have some hope there. Vanderbilt, I already feel that now look, you have a true freshman come out and play in the SEC. I don't care how good the kid's supposed to be coming out of high school. It's not an easy gig, especially when you're not coming to a program like Alabama or Georgia, that sort of deal. It's just not easy. But how do we know that the kid is not, best recruit in the country? And how do we know the best recruit in the country is not going to look the part? Because this is not Vanderbilt from, pick even just 5 years ago. This is a completely different program. This is a program now that wins. This is a program now that knows how to coach. They've got a good coach. They've got a good staff. They've got a good foundation. There are still good players on the team. So if, and yes, you lose Pavia, it is a major, major blow. Not because he's got the talent maybe that this freshman has, but he has loads of experience that the freshman doesn't have. And so there will be a drop-off. Even though this freshman is going to come in and he's going to make throws that Diego Pavia could never make, the fact is that he's not going to be able to make those throws on a consistent basis because it is what it is. I don't expect him to come out and look like the best true freshman quarterback that ever lived. But this is rare. Okay, we just talked about the starting freshman situation at Missouri, and is anybody going to get a chance to play? How often do they? And here you are, true freshman quarter. I don't even think there's another true freshman that is at quarterback that's starting this year. I don't think so. If it is, it's got to be somewhere in the group of 6. I haven't heard it unless it's a team I haven't even been able to dive into yet. But that is rare. So how good is this kid going to be? That is going to be, and that's the thing when you're making predictions, and especially when you're making predictions on sleeper teams and so forth. One of the things that you look at is there enough of a foundation? So if Jared Curtis hits, everything else will kind of follow. Okay. Because sometimes, Jared Curtis will hit, but we still don't have a running game, or we don't have enough experience or production at receiver, or our defense is terrible. No, Vanderbilt has got enough talent left over from last year and some new blood that they can still compete with the big boys if Jared Curtis can come out and really play. So I know most people are going to sit back and say, well, look, which I totally understand, and I would feel the same way, tell you the truth. I mean, I'm not going to predict Jared Curtis is going to come out and look better than Diego Pavia in his first year. I just don't think that'll be possible. But the other thing is there's some other ways that you can still be a better program. Remember Tennessee, depending on how old you are. The year they won the national championship with T. Martin at quarterback, it was the year after Peyton left. Because that's the exact point I'm getting to, is that Peyton Manning was just like he'll always be looked at as like the Greek god of Tennessee volunteer players. And so you have that guy who was really supposed to, what a disappointment that they didn't win a national championship with him. So he heads off to the NFL. They just couldn't do it. And what happens the next year with T. Martin? They win the national championship. So that's what I'm talking about. You just don't know. Just because Curtis is not Diego Pavia and can't do some of the things Diego was able to do does not mean that Vanderbilt can't be better. But it just all depends on just how close can Jared Curtis get to what Pavia was giving them. Big plays, maybe even making plays that Diego couldn't. And then, of course, the major thing is how is the rest of the team going to back him up? So I think that those are two really good sleepers at the back end of the SEC. And we'll talk South Carolina real soon. We'll have our Clemson contact, Phil Kornblut, join us, who actually is both Clemson and South Carolina because they do the show in South Carolina for both programs. But I just don't see a big difference right now between Vandy. Really, I probably have to say Tennessee, Missouri, Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, and Vandy. I don't think there's a difference. I just don't. I think there's little differences, but I think those teams are all kind of equal, and it's just going to play out with schedule, early injuries, even, and who gets off to a good start, anything, who's going to win the big games at the end. But I don't see a big difference. Therefore, why would I say, okay, when I'm making my predictions, why would I predict, say, what? And again, I'd have to really not be bought in all the way with one of these teams. So let's say I'm not bought in all the way with one of these teams I just mentioned, these 5 teams. Let's say I kind of feel they're whatever, good teams, they're going to be in the bowl, they're going to have better years, whatever. Why wouldn't I just go with Vanderbilt? that's the way that I think you should be projecting. Me personally, that's the way I do it. But I think the reason that it's something that you should try yourself is because, well, first of all, if you make these observations from these sleeper teams, which they don't always work, obviously they don't, but you don't have to hit them all. You hit half of them or 35% on the year, and you're doing a good job, especially because you're talking about 100-1 team to win the SEC, or you're talking about a 50-1 team to win the Big Ten, or whatever, all the way down the line. And we're going to have sleepers for all 4 Power 4 conferences and all 6 group of 6 conferences. We're going to have sleepers, official long shots, as well as who we think will win the championships. And we'll go over all the odds, and then we'll give you the reasons why as we break all that stuff down real soon. We still have about a month before we do that. But that's what that's a tip, is that if you're making those projections yourself, predictions, and you kind of feel like I do that, yeah, you know what? I don't think that team, or I mean, you might even feel that Tennessee is slightly better than Vandy. You might say, I think they're a little bit better. Okay, well, even a little bit better is still enough. It's close enough where you might want to consider going with the team that is considered the sleeper or the long shot. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you do. You just do it to try to, make yourself look smart. You just got to back it up, though. And you have to be able to come to the table and say, okay, these are the reasons why. I've done my homework. Whether they're well coached or not, or the schedule comes into play, there's got to be a variety of reasons. And you really have to believe it. You have to believe it. That's why I was saying, when I'm looking at those teams right now, I'm looking at these 5 teams, and I got to talk to my South Carolina guy, and that's it. I've already done the rest. So I don't know if he's going to sway me enough. I know they got an exciting quarterback and all, but I don't know if they're going to sway me enough. So I just kind of feel like I'm going to take Vandy again. But that doesn't mean that, look, because there are still how many teams ahead of them? There are 6-7 teams ahead of them. So just because I would have Vandy like 8th in the SEC, that's it's kind of funny how that would actually be like a big deal. But in reality, I guess it really wouldn't. If Vandy at the end of the season and we look and Vandy ends up as the 8th place team in the SEC, nobody's going to go, wow, what a season Vandy had. Nobody thought they were going to be the 8th place team in the SEC. But in order to do that, they're going to have to be like maybe a game out of 3rd. That's the sort of impact you're going to have for people to, be really interested. But I think Oklahoma is, I think they're capable. I think they did some really good things last year. Very important for the head coach to win some big games, and he finally did, and he got him to the postseason. That's a good step. You get Mateer back. That's also a big step. They can play defense. So, Oklahoma is going to be very interesting. Can't tell you about LSU or Ole Miss yet, but what I know about, look, the thing with LSU, it's and hopefully I'll be able to speak to somebody, but I mean, it's just, how Kiffin is, and they're going to win games. But the thing with Kiffin is, now he'll get an opportunity finally, because he should have coached the team last year in the postseason, and that's the one thing he hasn't been able to do. When there were 4 teams, he couldn't get to that point. He's had some opportunities to, but he just can't or couldn't. Well, now he's going to have a much better opportunity to be in the postseason, and then we'll find out about what kind of a coach he is. Can he win big games in the postseason? Oh, I guess we'll see. But I'm looking at this conference right now, and I just think that Texas, I hate to say it, but I think Texas is going to be awfully good. I would have Texas over Georgia right now. and I'm going to be hopefully talking to my Alabama guy real soon too. But I just also wouldn't doubt Chambliss at Ole Miss. I mean, that kid, the way he looked in the postseason last season, the year he had, that he did some really, really good things. And he did that before he came to Ole Miss. So I think Ole Miss is a team that, and I know that there's a big question at head coach. And I talked about this with one of my guests recently, and it's true, which is I just like 90% of the time when an assistant coach takes over for a head coach who leaves a program, and he does a good job over like a 1 game or a 2 or 3 game period. It's usually happens when the coach gets another job after the regular season ends. That's normally what happens. And then the new coach comes in, the interim. He goes to a bowl game. He wins the bowl game, and the players stick up for him. And I love this guy. And okay, and you know, in one respect, you get why you want to keep all the recruits and all of that, but still, you better be right. And 90% of the time, they're just not. These guys, you had them coach 1 game, and they won a bowl game, and you think the guy can coach an entire season and be in charge during the offseason. I mean, it's just a completely different deal, and that's what Ole Miss is going through right now. But if it hits, if the guy can coach, then they've got a really good quarterback, and Ole Miss could be really dangerous. I don't know. I kind of think they're getting really great value at 11-1 when we know, or just kind of feel. I kind of feel that when they lace it up against a Texas or a Georgia, that's going to be a 4-quarter game. And yet I'm getting 11-1 with Ole Miss instead of 2 or 3-1 with Texas or Georgia. But that's just the way the layout is. And you know Georgia and Texas are going to get those kind of numbers, and usually Alabama used to. But I don't see a huge difference, and I think Ole Miss is going to be a really good team to keep an eye on. Once again, I think they might. I really want to get an Ole Miss guy on here. I want to talk some Ole Miss football, and I really want to affirm or not whether Ole Miss could win and they've got enough talent. What do they look like? Let me see. Let's see what Ole Miss looks like. Here we go. All right. So there's Pete Golding, who's now the man. Okay. So you get Lacey back. I mean, come on. I mean, you got like one of the best running backs in the country back. You've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So let's see. Looks like they've got some continuity here on the offensive line, at least guys that were with the program. Let's see. You know, there's going to be talent here. So they get the kid from Syracuse. And who's the other kid they got here? At this one comes over. Also, they got the 2 kids from Syracuse. That's kind of neat. What'd they get? Like a Syracuse assistant that came over? And who's the leftover? Deuce Alexander. So you've got your big production guy left over. So that looks good. So yeah, there's like right there. Okay, Ole Miss is going to score a lot of points. They're going to be massively productive on offense. Again, as long as this offensive line holds up. They're going to find out more about that because there's a lot of new players on defense. But there's a few holdovers. I mean, you got Eccles. He's a big-time recruit. I mean, a big-time prospect. Perkins, same thing. Okay. So you got 2 really good players here, corner pieces right here. And then you got a whole bunch of new guys that will go over. So I don't even need to look at the rest of it, but I know enough to tell you right now that Ole Miss is being kind of forgotten. And I know that the coach is a big deal. I 100% agree. To me, that is actually going to be the big question. Maybe we'll find out when we talk to our Ole Miss guy, but that's really what that would be my primary question is how's Pete Golding's first offseason looking, in control of everything? How's it looking? How's he talking? What's the deal? How just what are you gathering the difference between when Kiffin was running things? So, yeah, I mean, and an 11-1 to win the SEC means that they're going to be a good number to win the national championship. Let's see. What is Ole Miss to win it all? 30-1. So I would take that. That's a good number. So, yeah, this is the fun thing that we're going to be doing for the next couple of months. But I can't get a complete feel of all of these teams, and at least until I get the majority of interviews per conference, and because I'm not going to get them all, but I want to be able to get the ones that I know will make a difference. And so I'll get an Ole Miss guy. I'll figure it out, and the quicker I can do that, and once we kind of can get enough of the information for say that first conference, whatever conference that might wind up being, then that'll obviously then be the first conference that we'll talk about when I'm all set. All right, I've got enough information, ready to go. Let's go ahead and make our official predictions, and we'll go over everything, and we're going to have all sorts of stuff, as I mentioned. So we'll have breakout performers in the conference, top true freshmen to watch. And we'll have an OFN, Ourlads Football Network, all SEC team, and for every conference and everything like that. So, yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. And we're going to make a lot of predictions, and we're going to hit on more than we're going to not hit on more. So all you want to do is, well, look, handicapping is different when you're talking about game-to-game handicapping as opposed to when you're forecasting an entire season. When you're talking handicapping game-to-game, I don't care what anybody tells you, because they say really crazy stuff, when they're promoting picks. Don't let anybody fool you into believing that, I was 65% last year in my picks, or I was 80% last year in my picks. Doesn't happen. Okay. It doesn't. If you're 65% on your picks for the whole season, then you're the best handicapper in the country. And there's only one of them. Okay. So the average to be a really good one is somewhere between like 57 to 60%. That's doing a really good job, and you're a really good handicapper. But for predicting who's going to do things that I just mentioned that we'll be doing, not that we won't be picking games, but forecasting conference titles, forecasting sleepers, long shots, all that kind of stuff, that's different. And I expect, and I have over the years been, we're and again, everything's different. I'm not talking about every single little prediction we're going to make, but for the most part, we've had a lot of success. And it's the one thing I really enjoy doing more than anything is finding those sleepers. That's why the one thing I like doing every week during the season in college football is finding the double-digit upset picks. I'll always put together anywhere from 1 to 5 on a week and say, okay, these are my top double-digit upset plays. That's like the main thing I enjoy doing, because the money line numbers are really big, and you can make an impact there. So that's the thing I like. I'll leave all the other stuff to some of the top handicappers in the world, the professionals. And you get those guys like Jim Feist and Andy Isco over at ProLine TV. We'll be doing that again on Friday. We're going to be taking a look at the AFC East, I believe. I think we're doing the AFC East on Friday. And we only have 3 more to go. So I think we have the AFC East, then we have the NFC North, and then we have the AFC West. And that'll wrap it up for our Friday coverage, where we go into each division in the NFL and we get the expert handicappers assessment, going over the win totals, the all sorts of odds pertaining to divisions and Super Bowl, anything, and get their take on what they think and just get their rankings and who they believe are the top teams to keep an eye on. And we get the two opinions from two of the top professional handicappers in Las Vegas. And that's just a segment that's going to wrap up in 3 weeks. And then that Friday slot will open up again. And it'll just be like all the other slots that we have Monday through Thursday. Speaking of slots, tomorrow we are going to go back to our 4 o'clock coverage. On Wednesday, we have an interview with AJ Black. We're talking Boston College. It'll be the first of 3 straight ACC interviews. I'll speak with AJ Black of BC Eagles Insider, also part of the 247 Sports Network. Just like Jim Hammett, who covers the Pitt Panthers for panther-lair.com, part of 247. That's on Thursday. And then after Jim Hammett, Thomas Dunn comes on. He's with On3 Rivals, publisher of the Golden Bear Report, and we'll talk some Cal football. So we're going to get some caught up time in the ACC with Boston College, Pitt, and Cal in succession Wednesday and Thursday. Next week, more ACC talk on Wednesday with Virginia. We'll do some Big 12 on Tuesday with Kansas State. That's a week from today. And then on Thursday, a week from, it will be some more SEC talk when we talk about Mississippi State. And that's just what's going on right now. That's what's in the schedule right now. I will definitely be adding a lot more. And all this is going to continue. And even when we start doing a different format in August, when we start, adding some more content, going over some of these predictions and forecasting and giving you the players to watch and the teams to watch and why, we're always also going to be interviewing someone and previewing a team in college or the NFL. So we're just adding on to it as we get to a certain point where I can start now, because I've been accumulating so much information over the past couple of months. I haven't done this before. I mean, I usually start like everybody else. You get the Phil Steele magazine in, which is a good kind of starting point. And I also, in the NFL side, get the Mark Lawrence has the Playbook magazine. I don't know if there's a link in the description of this video, but I'll start putting it in there. But the Mark Lawrence magazine, this is the one from last year. And this is like you have to have this. If you're an NFL or college football fan and you like to handicap games or follow the games, point spreads, all that kind of stuff, you have to have this. This is the best magazine out there for just that. There's all 138 college football teams in here, all 32 NFL teams. You got 2 pages for the NFL and 1 for college. You got some really good information outside of the team reports. So this is a great get. And so, usually that would be it. That's the starting point. Okay, I've got my information. But once we started doing the 5 days a week, that was part of the reason I wanted to do that. I wanted to get a head start on everybody else, and we have done that. So while most people are starting when I used to start, we're already 2 months ahead. And that gives us the opportunity to cover more and more and more teams, because it's a lot better to cover teams and get information from people like Cody and say, hey, wait a second, Cody, give me your take on the depth chart for the Missouri Tigers and this player and that player and this coach. And that goes a long way compared to just picking up a magazine, reading a magazine and reading a couple of sentences and things. Come on. That's good stuff. Don't get me wrong, because it's valuable just to have all of it at your fingertips, or whether it's a PDF file or a hard copy. But when it comes to in-depth analysis of the team, and also keep in mind that as good as the Phil Steele magazine is, that depth chart that he has is like changing dramatically, especially with the portal. So it's really just a good, like I said, it's really good to have where you have a lot of players, and so it's, and just you're right there in your fingertips. Here's last year's. So you just have it right here, and I can go, all right, cool. I can just open up a page, and I've got all sorts of, it's also a way for you put your notes in, and you get your notes and all this stuff, and you follow it. To me, this is just perfect to use because of that. It's like a notebook for the season. That's what I use it for. But with the portal, man, that's you don't get that really. Or if you do, if you use the Phil Steele magazine for the depth chart, then you're missing out. You're behind. And that's why we love doing this, because if you are lucky enough to find out about us at Ourlads, whether you watch or listen to our podcasts, fact is you've got updated depth charts. Now, look, college at this point in time, even for us, is going to be difficult. Now, I'm going to turn over some of this information I just heard Cody tell me, because I think there were like 3 changes we had to update. Phil still can't update them, and there are updates. So, yeah, I think it's just the best way to do it, and I certainly hope that you guys are going to be with us every step of the way. We're going to have a lot of fun this season. This is sort of the, this is like the time of the, it's sort of like, this is our off season. This is even our off season. This is our opportunity to gather all the information and get ready, because we're going to play games just like they play games. We're going to play our own games. And our games, though, are a lot different than their games. Their games are done on a field, but our games are done when we have to sit there and talk to you and give you information a week before a game and say, okay, this is what we think. This is what you're going to see. This is what we believe you should see based on the information we have. I'm not going to sit there and be giving you, oh, I'm doing all this so I can give you our picks of the week. Or that's all this is for, is for gambling purposes. That's not the case. Again, if you want that side of things, you can head on over to Proline TV, and Jim Feist and Andy Isco will have you covered, and Mark Lawrence. They'll all have you covered. But what we're going to do is we're going to get you prepared for these games, because if you're a football fan, it's not about gambling. This is, I think, the sad part of the Brendan Sorsby saga. It's like, man, he had it all. What do you need to gamble for? That's something weird about that. But, everybody, look, when you're young, you do stupid shit. So it is what it is. But that's what football is not about. That's why I think it's, I don't know. I mean, everybody's different, but you know how coaches want to recruit players, especially in the NFL nowadays, but even in college, they want to recruit players that love football. Not every coach, but there are coaches out there. They're not going to, I'm not bringing that kid to my program. I know he's great. I know he's going to help us win. I don't trust him. He's not one of us. He does not love the sport or put the sport ahead of other hobbies he does. And that's kind of the deal. What I'm talking about is that if you love football, if it's the thing that you love the most, then that's what this is for. To gather all of this information and to have fun talking about it on a week-to-week basis, and have fun going over the games and analyzing the games and letting you know beforehand what you think about the games. And the only way that's going to continue on a week-to-week basis to be enjoyable, informative, entertaining is if we do a good job. And if we do a good job, then it's going to wind up transferring over to you. And then we're going to have a lot of fun all week long, all season long. Because how much fun is it if you're talking about stuff and you're inaccurate? Or, I mean, you don't know how many, I mean, you should know, but how many channels are out there, and how many football channels, and they're all talking about their team, and they're talking about this, that, and the other thing. Man, there's so many that I listen to, and it's like, they just don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not talking about necessarily about specific team sites that like, for instance, I wouldn't have any idea how to have a debate with someone on Missouri football. I'll leave that up to Cody. But if somebody wants to talk to Missouri football with me on a national level, and they're like me, and they're not a Missouri fan, I feel pretty good about that conversation, because chances are they haven't talked to someone like Cody, and I have. So I'm not an expert of the Missouri Tigers. I'm more prepared to talk about Missouri now than they are, on average. But when I look at and listen to some of these channels for teams that I know, like my teams, real easy to pick up stuff, real easy. And it's just, you go, man, they just don't know what they're talking about. And anyway, that's the whole idea, is that you got to try to find people you can trust. Now, if you just go to people because you like their entertainment value, you laugh, you're not taking it seriously, that's what you're there for, then that's great. To each its own. But if you're doing it because you love football and you want to just soak up as much information every chance you can to be smarter and to learn the game, especially because most of the people that are watching are younger than I am. And I have absolutely no problem. Matter of fact, this is what I love doing, is giving it back and making sure that's why I put in all this time and effort to doing this. It doesn't help me a whole lot more than just doing it for the passion of it, to be very up to date and knowledgeable about everything going on in the NFL and college football. The whole idea of doing it is, it's sort of like why people love to teach. I think that's a good analogy. People love to teach because they really enjoy that environment. They enjoy, just like a coach. Coaches like to coach. They love to see a player get better, and they've got information that player needs in order to develop the player. It's the same thing here. That's what I have fun with, is making you guys more prepared to go out there and to use that information any way you want. So that's what we're going to be doing all season long. And we still have 2 months in the off season to do it too. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be recording an interview with Alec Bussey from Cyclone Alert, Iowa State. We did some Iowa State talk with Alec last year, and I'm still not sure when we're going to post that, but it's one of those rare recording interviews I have. So we'll be posting it within a few days. And then I'll do the live interviews after that. No more NFL interviews this week as of now. But we do have our NFL coverage on Friday, as I mentioned, and we'll be talking about the AFC East. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. Once again, thanks to Cody Goodwin from PowerMizzou at 247 Sports. Links in the description of this video. You can check it out. All of his information there. If you're a Missouri fan, he does a great job, so you can check that out. Again, Missouri 6.5 on the under or the over on the win total. The SEC line is 35-1. They are the 10th team right now. And the championship number is 90-1, which actually isn't bad. 90-1 for Missouri to win a national championship. And and so again, it was great to have Cody on for the first time. I certainly hope we get the opportunity to talk to him again. And it looks like the camera is zigging out here. So we're going to zag out. We'll see everybody again tomorrow at 4:00 for our live interview, talking some Boston College football. We'll see if we could do a little bit of something else after that. And also we'll have that Iowa State interview ready for you guys too. And if you're into horse racing, go check out my horse racing show that I do on ProLine TV. We're going to be covering, I've been off for like a few weeks with that one, but we'll be talking some horse racing on Thursday night on ProLine TV. We'll talk some NASCAR on Saturday night as well. We just did a NASCAR show earlier today. We do it every Tuesday at 4:00, which is part of the reason that we pick this day, every Tuesday, to air our football coverage at night. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see everybody again tomorrow right here on the Ourlads Football Network.